When did you get it, bud? When did you get yours?
Yeah, we didn't get
I got it last Tuesday.
All right, you're live. All right. Yes, we put the ID in.
because he had
We rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. This regular meeting of the Township Council is held in accordance with the scheduled meetings of the Township Council established and adopted by Township Council, which schedule designates the time, date, and place of this meeting. Adequate public notice of this meeting has been provided pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act. We are using an electronic amplifying device in order to obtain a clearer audible record. We request all those wishing to speak to raise your hand, state your name and address directly into the microphone. The recording device will be so utilized by the Township Clerk's Office for the preparation of minutes and shall be the official record of the Township Council meeting. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Present.
Ms. Grace? Here. Mr. Mignon?
Here.
Mrs. Stubbs? Mrs. Winters? Here. Mrs. Strata? Here. Mr. Mercado?
Present.
Mr. Caronian?
Here.
Mr. Curtis?
Here.
Mr. Lechner?
Here.
Chief Harkins?
Here.
Mr. Chadwell?
Here. We'll now open up the first public portion. This public portion is for 15 minutes. It's for agenda items only. And each speaker is entitled to speak up to 3 minutes. Once everyone has spoken, they have an opportunity to speak again. Just a refresher on our rules of order. Each speaker is only entitled to speak 2 times during a public portion. Anyone like to speak on the agenda? First public portion. Mr. Krug.
It's loose.
Carol, do you have a
No.
timer?
No,
good. Oh, no.
it's a loose socket.
Yeah, all right, I have something for that.
Evening, council,
Good evening.
crew, Blackwood Estates. Hope everyone had a happy new year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
Resolution 37, the adoption of the temporary budget, is on this council agenda. If you recall, at the last meeting of 2020, I had brought some data visualization graphics with regard to the municipal budget over about a 20-year period. I was wondering if during the reorganization, which I think happened earlier this year, if President had decided that a budget subcommittee was a good idea as I had suggested, and whether that was going to be implemented.
We had reorganization last Monday. No, a subcommittee was not appointed. If there's a need to have a subcommittee for our budget, I will appoint that in the spring.
Would there be a deadline for that appointment?
No.
Secondarily, I was hoping to hear from maybe a couple of my representatives with regard to that data visualization I presented and the nearly 2.5x increase in municipal spending over a 2-decade period. Was anyone able to do their own research or take my research and take a better look at it? And if so, what were your thoughts having looked at that?
Does anyone have any comments?
Sorry, Paul, I didn't say it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sweet? No. We'll close first public portion. Ordinance, first reading. Ordinance authorizing the sale of real property known as designated as tax blocks 12301 lot 4 on the tax map of the Township of Gloucester and located at 41 Turnersville Road, Blackwood, New Jersey. This piece of property is township owned. It's adjacent to Senior Campus 1. This ordinance is to sell a piece of property to the Gloucester Township Housing Authority and designated for possibly senior housing or affordable family housing. Mr. Carlmer, is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, that's exactly.
There will be a public hearing at the second reading on our January 25th meeting. I entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Winters. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Ms. Grace?
Yes.
Mr. Minio?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters?
Yes.
Mrs. Estrada? Yes. Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next, we have our resolutions of consent agenda. Any council member would like to have any of these items removed, please speak up. Hearing none, I entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Estrada and Mr. Hutchinson. On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Ms. Grace?
Yes.
Mr. Minio?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters?
Yes.
Mrs. Estrada? Yes. Mr. Mercado?
Yes. Next, oh, great.
Sorry, go ahead. Resolution 37, resolution adopting a temporary budget for the Township of Gloucester for 2021.
I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchinson?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Mr. Minio?
Yes.
Mrs. Stubbs? Yes. Mrs. Winters?
Yes.
Mrs. Estrada? Yes. Mr. Mercado?
Yes, we received one GT Gov Access email from Ira Eckstein at 1 Cedar Creek, Laurel Springs, New Jersey, Glen Oaks section. There are two lots on Summerdale Road with the address of 380 and 400 Summerdale Road that are owned by the township. They each have solar panels on them. How much money do they generate for the township? This lease started in 2017, and it generated $48,000 for the township. In 2021, $51,957, and the lease will end in the year of 2031, and that figure will be at $63,335. Thank you, Mr. Eckstein, for your email. We'll now open up the second public portion. This is for any item that anyone wishes to address the council. There's a 30-minute time limit. Each speaker is entitled to 5 minutes. And repeat again, with our rules of order, only individuals can only speak 2 times during a public portion. We'll now open up the public portion. Mr. Sweet. Before you speak, I'm going to give you an answer in regards to your question last Monday for our Blue Wire. $6,200 a month. Is that correct, Mr. Curtis?
I'm sorry, did you say 64 or 62?
62.
62.
6200.
6,200.
6,200.
And that's a month, but do they do other outside projects with that?
With that's the fee that.
That's a flat fee no matter what they do?
Yes, it's my understanding that everything is covered under that.
So if they put in 100 hours or they put in 5 hours, they get 6,200.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Can we get clarification on that? I
I
understand.
got it. I do it.
Okay. Please, thank you. Good evening, excuse me. Good evening, councils. Sam Seat from Muriel.
Good evening, sir.
In the Sicklerville Sun, there was an article saying going forward for Gloucester Township the next year. And it said that the mayor said that there's going to be about $300,000 coming from Community Development Block Grant for businesses located in Gloucester Township for helping out. Can we get some more information on that, or do we?
I didn't see that article. Mr. Curtis?
I didn't, again, I don't have any information. Mr. Sweet did not email me today indicating he's looking for a response.
Is it talking about the 493 or you said $300,000?
Oh, it was 300. It was in the Sicklerville Sun. I'm sure if somebody wanted to pull up the Sicklerville Sun online, it says the mayor going forward wants to vaccinate, I think, 200 people a day.
All right. So we're talking about business or vaccination. You
I
had it?
didn't hear it either. No, I didn't hear it.
Trot, can you bring that up on your phone?
I can look it up.
Okay, go ahead.
But it was in the same article. It was just going forward, what to expect the next year in Gloucester Township. And one of them was the vaccinate, at least 200 people a day in Gloucester Township. I think it was 200. And then it was $300,000 coming from the Community Development Block Grant for area businesses. So I was just asking, like I said, asking for clarification on that.
Okay.
because it was in the paper. So we're saying we don't know anything about that right now?
I am not, yeah, I don't have his comments, so I can't comment on it. Okay. Now, say it. Pause it. Okay, township preparing to roll out small business assistance program utilizing funds from the CBG, issued by federal government. Early 2021, more than $300,000 anticipated to be available for small businesses in Gloucester Township. Mr. Carr, can you give us additional information on that, please?
Absolutely.
Sam, once I get more, I will share that with you.
Okay, the other my last question is, a couple people have stood up here before and asked about the lease with our ambulance service. And I believe Mr. Carter said you would look into it, whether, because we're not charging anything for that building.
We're not.
Okay, you had said,
I made that statement.
yeah, I understand that, and you said that, I believe they had asked if you looking into it, if we were going to charge going forward, because it's coming out of our pockets.
Well, again, as I explained, the mayor made that agreement in a time that we were in an emergency situation and had no money. Basically, Gloucester Township EMS said, we're folding, and we had about 2 or 3 weeks to figure out what we were doing. So he made that deal with them that they could be in that building, and he wanted them to be centrally located.
Yeah, I understand that.
That was his word.
So they're just never going to pay anything for that building, that
I
deal?
don't believe he has any intention of, in the middle of an agreement, of coming along and saying, okay, now you need to start making these.
Okay, and how long is that agreement for?
It's for the balance of the 5-year period. I want to say it's for another 1.5 or 2 years.
It's a two left.
Yeah,
Is 2 left from now, or?
that was from the original GTEMS.
Okay.
The end of 2022.
All right. Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Sam. Anyone else? Mr. Cruz?
Evening again. Sam reminded me, the CARES Act money, whether it be for the small business or for the rental mortgage assistance, is there a process by which to apply for that now? And is that on the website, or how do individuals go about?
That's the 493 that we talked about at our last meeting. That has not been rolled out yet.
That's not.
I'd asked Mr. Cars to reach out to the administrator of our CDBG to give us an update on that. We have not received those funds yet. I know there's been some internal conversations of how to possibly roll that out, but at this time, we do not have the money in place.
Is that a township issue, or is that a state or
It's
federal
federal
issue?
government, it's federal funds,
I think it's a federal issue at this point.
federal funds.
I don't think they've determined, again, I'll check the trial, but I don't think that they made the determination of basically.
Business portion of that, which I think was a different allocation, $100 and something thousand. Has that already been allocated, or how is that being dispersed?
Mr.
It's going
Cars?
back to 170,000. I think it's in the same status as the 493 at this point.
This is all just stuck in limbo from the Fed?
That's my understanding, but I'll get back to you once I talk to the professionals that are handling it.
Okay. That's a bit, I mean, whether it's Fed, state, or local, I mean, a bit disconcerting considering what some folks are going through, that they can't get this money if needed. I know we've lost several businesses to this point, and I know a couple people personally that are certainly in need of some assistance with the rental and the mortgage assistance. So I don't know if there's anything we can do. I know I spoke to this before. I think we need to be as diligent as possible in reallocating this money to the right places. Look forward to hearing back from you, Mr. Cardis.
I agree, Mr. Cruz. And Tom, after you speak to Mr. Zampino, I try at Congressman Norcross's office and perhaps get some assistance there. Because this is a federal level, this is HUD money.
Yeah, I'll get an email from Mr. Zafino.
Okay, thank you.
And then just secondarily, I want to make sure I'm not reading this wrong. But when I had asked for responses in the first public portion, and I don't get anything back, there's not an opinion or a statement, a concern is what I brought forth. Was it useful? I mean, that leads me to believe that it wasn't researched. I guess there could be no opinion, which leaves me really nowhere to go with what I brought forth to this council. Maybe you don't want to speak because this is a political sphere and you're afraid of saying the wrong thing. I'm just trying to understand where you stood on that particular topic so that we can have a discourse, a productive discourse. But with nothing returned to me, it leaves me in a precarious situation where I don't really know how to move forward.
Would anyone like to comment?
I'll respond, and I said it before. You put together an expense budget, you compared us to other towns, which I don't know is comparable, and you want some kind of response to say that Gloucester Township's up here when everybody else is down here. I don't agree. We're a different type of town, but they're all different types of towns.
Tom, I appreciate your opinion.
I
looking
think Mr. Krug was looking for his comments from our colleagues on the council. Correct, Mr. Krug?
Well, yeah, you're my representative, so I was hoping to hear.
I'll say the same thing. I always feel that we're unfairly compared to Washington Township. We don't have the same level of rails. So when we start to compare different townships, there are different facets to each one. And I've always thought that to be a problem. We just don't have the rails. We're working on it. We're trying, but we're on a better community than Washington Township. So to compare the two of us, I don't think it's fair. But still, the standard that we have with the kid down, that has to be considered also.
Sure, and once again, and my comment to Tom at the last meeting was take Washington Township and Voorhees Township out of it. I did compare them on 3 variables which I thought were important in a comparison. If you feel as though those variables aren't important, that's fine. But if you take Gloucester Township on its own, it doesn't change that since Mr. Mercado has been on council in 2004, we've gone from $21 million to $58 million in a budget, which is nearly a 3X.
And while I respect what you're saying, the fact that you gave us the comparison, that's what we had to look at. So that's the way we look at it, because you offered this comparison. We didn't just put Gloucester Township, we put 2 other townships on where we looked at. So
Refresh my memory.
that's the way we looked at it.
Mr. Carter, can you let Ms. Stokes finish, please?
I'm just saying that's the way we saw it, because that's the way you presented it to us.
Sure.
So if you didn't want us to look at it as a comparison, even if you didn't think it's a proper comparison, then maybe there's 2 others should be different. And it should have just been just.
Or there's just 2 ways of looking at the data that could be helpful.
Well,
It can be looked at singularity or it can be looked at as a comparison.
But Mr. Cruz, if you're gonna give people a whole sphere of data, they're gonna look at all that data. If you're gonna put it as a comparison, then that's how we're gonna look at it. So if you want us to just discuss Gloucester Township, or Gloucester Township is given, then maybe that's the data that we should have, that we can take a look at, and then have more data beyond that. Well, I'm going by what was said earlier, where we rate in, where we rate them. I don't think that's a bad rating. I think we're doing pretty good. We can do better. We always like to, rise above, and do better, but we're not in a bad space. But your concern is that compared to the others, which you showed us, we're going up and up. So that's what we look at. My first thought was, well, we're not even complicated. That was my first thought.
Well, whether you take it against Washington Township and Voorhees, or you just look at it as ourselves, up, and up, you're exactly right. Both ways, that's how it is.
Right.
On its own, we're 3X. Against other townships, we're 2X. The other townships' municipal budget just hasn't grown the way it has in Gloucester Township. If you want to throw that out, that's fine, but it's still a 3X on its own, which has to be disconcerting.
And again, I understand your point, but you asked about the comment, and the reason why I didn't get one is because when I looked at it, I said, I didn't think it was a fair comparison. A comparison is what I looked at, because that's what you presented.
Can I ask a question? include Cherry Hill in your analysis?
I did not.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see those numbers, because we are more comparable to Cherry Hill than any of the other towns that you mentioned. And I'm pretty sure their appropriations, their expenditures are a lot higher.
That'd be interesting to see.
I'd be shocked if it's not.
Sure, sure.
So
So what,
that's something I'm gonna look up in my office when I get back, because I'm curious about what that is.
Ms. Grace?
And honestly, I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be rude, because I felt the same way. You're not comparing apples to apples. So, I looked at, I have it here, but, I did think to myself, well, how can we decrease that? I did ask myself the question. But it's hard to look at this and say, okay, can I compare? I actually couldn't really, honestly feel like this is a great chart and you worked hard on it, but it really is not apples to apples, so that's why I didn't.
so what variables make you think we're more comparable to Cherry Hill? Because the reason I chose Washington Township was proximity, their square mileage, which is 21 square miles as a township. We're 23. Population, we're 62, they're 45,000. And then the taxable base is about 5 billion each. Those are the variables as to why I chose those, which I thought were important. Once again, you can throw those out and just look at Gloucester Township. I think the red line tells the story, really. If we want to get rid of the variables because it becomes too nuanced, that's fine. We can just look at ourselves and say, from a fiduciary perspective, we've got to change this tide.
I can say, honestly, and I wrote it on my paper, as a new council person, how do we decrease taxes? I have to figure that out with my colleagues. So I'm not taking your information lightly. It's just that it was very difficult for me to assess based on what you gave. But you made a good point. We are going up. So, it's important for us to figure out how to decrease taxes.
I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, thank you all.
Thank you much, Mr. Cruz. Is there anyone else? Mr. Sweet?
Sam Street again from Ariel. Quick clarification, and then I have another question on the taxes. You said we're only allowed to talk twice during a public portion?
Yes, that's on our rules of order.
Okay, so does that mean twice during the entire meeting, or
No,
twice like for the
twice
first
for each
public portion? So each public
So you can
portion,
speak 4 times, and when we have an ordinance there,
6.
5.
Okay, I was wondering.
And I'm limited during the ordinance. So I know you guys look forward to that, right?
With regards to the, Councilwoman Stubbs, you said the taxable ratables aren't the same. I looked up the tax rate per $100 for Gloucester Township, compared it to Cherry Hill and Evesham. And I didn't look it up for 2020, but for 2019, we were greater than Cherry Hill and Evesham added together per our tax rate per $100. And is that because we don't have businesses in here, going to Councilwoman Stubbs' ratables? Like, why is
I was talking about the businesses, that when you compare, looking at us and you look at Washington Township and the businesses.
Well, no, I understand that. I'm asking though, our tax rate per $100, if you look up the tax records, is, I think, 112. Cherry Hill is 58 cents and Evesham is 54 cents or 53 cents. And so if you add them together, they're less than what our tax rate per 100 is. And I realize we're a bedroom community, so is our tax rates falling on the residents, and that's why our taxes are higher, as opposed to the businesses, that we don't have as many businesses as a Washington Township or Cherry Hill or Marlton? Can we get some clarification on that?
So, Mr. Cruz, the second meeting's brought up, I've been here for 17 years. So 2004, this town looks very different than 17 years ago. I've lived in the town since 1999, And one of the things that I saw and I saw firsthand is that this was, we have people who have lived here. Mr. Harkins, Chief Harkins lived it all his life.
1978.
And this was a bedroom community. There are people who remember when Blackwood Clemson Road had farms on it. And so this was a bedroom community, 30 to 35,000 residents, and then we saw an explosion. So we had a population explosion. Along with that came the need for businesses for our residents. With any new business or any type of development, there's always going to be chatter or conversation about whether that's needed in our community. We could look back 6 years ago, if we take a look at our outlets, people did not want our outlets there. People talk about the wildlife. No one's going to go to the outlets. It's going to shut down, all these different things. But we were behind our neighbors in Washington Township when it came to our commercial ratables and our friends in Cherry Hill. And so, but when you go down 42 or you go down Egg Harbor Road in Washington Township, you're seeing vacant storefronts there as well. If you go down Cherry Hill, are you in 70? Okay, yeah, that Earlton section there, is that 70? Earlton,
Yep.
And you see vacant properties there. So we were always behind as a community in regards to our commercial ratables. I can't tell you the figure here, but I remember when I was on council the first couple of years, Mr. Palumbo said that 78% of our ratables was residential. So any increase that there was on the town fell on our residential taxpayers. And Mr. Carmer, I'd love that we had Mr. Carmer here, and 38 years and you never missed a reorg. But Mr. Carmer could tell you from his time on council, and I'll give you more time, Sam, I'm sorry, if keep talking. But this was a bedroom community. And, we hear whether it's a story or not, but, they talked about for years that the Deptford Mall was supposed to be here. And the residents said we didn't want it. And so when the outlets came here, it was another bite at the apple to get, that type of development here. But, it is, we do our best with our commercial ratables. We try to make sure that they blend in within our community. If you look down Berlin Crosskeys Road, you've been there 15 years, Sam?
16.
16, okay. Berlin Crosskeys Road didn't look like the way it
No,
does now.
I'm-
And every year was we're going to, add more lanes to Berlin Crosskeys Road. And so I'm sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but a lot has changed. And to answer some of Mr. Krug's comments, there are more. It says 62,000. We have 64 according to the census from 10 years ago, but it's probably higher than that. And it's just.
Just a point.
I thought you were saying it's much higher. 1 second.
Yeah.
But there are more needs and services that we're providing to our residents. And each year, at the beginning of the year, you get how to deal with your finances, how to save money and tips. I was reading an article today that talked about the things that have actually decreased in the last 10 years. They talk about long distance telephones. No one uses long distance telephones. Use your cell phone. But they talk about things that have increased, and there's not a lot of them that are on that list. Each year we have contracts. It's not each year, but we have 6 bargaining units. There's contracts. Those who work in those bargaining units, they expect an increase. There are the trash that we just dealt with. They were going to ding us for $1 million if we didn't go out and rebid it a second time, and we're able to save $1 million off that. So the sale of land, to the housing authority, there's an opportunity to bring in $872,000 back to the township. So there are different things that we're working on, but I do welcome the comments from Paul, and I welcome the comments from you, because here's the thing, make us think about things. So, I'm sorry, I went all over the place. Go ahead.
I believe
Mr.
Mr.
Carter,
Carter said
I
something.
want to point out that I just did the research just now. So I still say Cherry Hill is most comparable because the population is about the same as Gloucester Township. I don't know which one has got more or less, but they're probably within 1,000 to 3,000 in population. Their appropriations for the fiscal year, because they're still in the fiscal year, 2021 budget was $74.5 million. That their tax rate is lower than all. They have rateables. Anybody driving through there can see they're lock, stock, and barrel for commercial and industrial rateables. We are still a bedroom community. Whether you like it or not, we're a bedroom community. That remains. I mean, we're trying to dig out of that by bringing in outlets and other businesses, Dave & Buster's. But again, we're still a bedroom community. And the fact of the matter is, in the 2020 rateables, we are out of 37 municipalities, we are the 17th lowest local rate. So I don't think that's bad.
Again, my question though is, our tax rate assessed per $100 is double that of Cherry Hill.
I don't have that figure.
So,
We can look
just-
into that.
What my question is, we're double Cherry Hill. If you add Cherry Hill and Eastham together, we're actually, I think, 2 cents more than that combined. That's 2 communities. Is it because we don't have rateables?
Well, Sam, if I can,
That's my question.
I think if you start from the point, we have a need. We have a need to fund our government, right?
Yep.
And we know what that number is gonna be. We just have to figure out, I guess, what the rate is. Or we know what our, the base is, just a little bit. But we have to figure out what we need for that. So you just simply multiply the tax rate by the what? The value of the property, right?
Correct, for $100 assessed value.
So if their properties are worth a lot more than ours, they don't have to have as high a rate.
Right, and that's the issue.
So-
Our amount to be raised by taxation is higher than Cherry Hills. And it's because of the rateables that Cherry Hill enjoys.
When you say rateables though, do you mean businesses?
I mean businesses.
I mean,
Okay,
if the
so
They're paying tax dollars and you're not, and Cherry Hill's not providing services.
okay, but then this whole, and pardon me when I say this, but this goes back to, we need to bring businesses in. But when we bring the businesses in, then we're giving away the farm per se.
So is Cherry Hill.
Okay, but right now, they're taxing their residents at 58, no, I might be off a couple cents, 58 cents, which is double what we're taxing our residents.
What's that have to do with debate? Debate.
Well, because-
Is a tool to attract businesses. We've argued this ad nauseam. We have to remain competitive.
Okay, but as we've said, we're the same size, as you've said, we're the same size as Cherry Hill.
Yeah.
All right, so businesses should be clamoring to come here at some point. So, I'm going back to where our tax assessed value is double that of township, and it has nothing to do with appropriations. The tax assessed value of our properties here is double that of Cherry Hill, and as council, maybe we can look into that, work with the tax office, see what we can do with that, or what you guys can do, or what administration can do to maybe raise our housing values, because a house here in Gloucester Township that's a 4-bedroom finished basement is half that of what's in Cherry Hill. And I understand, but we're paying the same taxes as in Cherry Hill because of the tax assessed value, which goes back, according to everybody here, due to the lack of rateables. So either A, we need to get more rateables in here, which I know is easier said than done, or we have to work on our tax assessed value per $100 and lower that somehow, or raise our housing value.
So you're saying raise the assessed values?
No, I'm saying, no, lower, our assessed value per $100 is double that of Cherry Hill.
Well, to help the budget, you need a higher assessed value.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, why is ours double that of Cherry Hill? That's what I'm asking. And is it because of our lack of rateables?
No, it has to do with the market. It has to do with what homes are selling for in that particular area. And the
But our
problem
taxes-
is, you're jumping all over the place. The problem.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I've stayed on point. You guys keep jumping all over the place.
No, that's not true.
No, that is true,
You
Tom.
bring up expenditures and you tell us that you compare us to Winslow.
I didn't bring up expenditures. I didn't bring up expenditures. Okay,
Sam,
no, no.
Sam,
First
Sam,
off,
Sam,
Mr. Carter,
Sam, you do me a favor, just let him finish, and then let's not overstep each other.
So then I bring up a municipality that I feel is comparable. And then I explain to you why it's comparable and also why they have a lower tax rate. And it's because of the ratables. And yeah, I'd love to have their ratables. Those ratables have been long established. I mean, drive down Route 7, drive down Route 73. I mean, come on. You see what's there.
So what are our ratables? 2 billion?
Our ratables.
It's four something.
Like 4.6 billion.
Yeah.
And what are theirs? Do we have any idea?
No, I don't know.
Okay, so theirs is probably 10, okay? So if theirs is 10,
A higher proportion of it is going to be commercial and
right,
industrial.
but the rate's gonna be applied, the rate in Cherry Hill's gonna be lower because their rate is
And that
for
helps
that
drive
much
down the
higher.
rate. Correct, exactly.
So,
It's math.
so that was my initial question is, but our ratables are not there. So then we as a township need to go get ratables, which again is easier said than done. I get that. Okay, and I'm not saying, you can snap your fingers and, 6 companies are coming here. But we need to do a better job, or you guys need to do a better job of getting ratables in here.
if we do away with the abatement programs and the pilots, how does that achieve your goal of bringing more ratables here?
We gotta get more,
Next time somebody comes up to this microphone and they say we need to stop giving out these abatements, you got my back, right? When I say not a good idea, I'm not gonna consider doing that, you got my back on that, right?
it would depend,
Okay.
to be honest with you. If I'm being 100% honest, it would depend. Do I think Wawa needs an abatement? No. Do I think a mom and pop shop who's building out needs an abatement? Shayna's Wild Fig, for example.
Do I have the ability to discriminate against one business?
You don't have the ability to discriminate, but again, it goes back to, now I'm jumping over, but it goes back to the township again council can dictate, make, right now, the entire township has to do it. And I understand the whole abatement, if they apply for the abatement, the paperwork's intact and everything's good, then you guys can't do anything. Is that correct, Mr. Carler? If Dave & Buster's applies if Royal Farms, I'll use Royal Farms because Mr. Mercado said, Royal Farms did not apply for an abatement. But if they had applied for an abatement and put all the paperwork in, you guys wouldn't have been able to deny them. I get that. Okay? But as a council, you can go back and say that the entire township is not in need of rehabilitation now. We can rework that. We can make Blackwood Clementon Road in charge of rehabilitation as opposed to down to the outlets. Make Blackwood Clementon Road people to come in. You want to your point, Mr. Hutchinson, where you said we need to have businesses come in and make it enticing. Well, we want to build up Blackwood Clementon Road, which according to Mr. Lechner, and several meetings ago, is the most well-traveled road in the township. So let's build that up and maybe make the other end where the outlets are in Dave & Buster's not an abatement, which the abatements then go to hurting our schools because it's bringing Dave & Buster's abatement isn't hurting our schools per se, other than that there's no money going to schools, but no one's moving to Gloucester Township because of Dave & Buster's.
So you're saying pick the best places for businesses to develop, an industry to develop, and take away the abatement. That makes zero sense to me. Correct. Because now you put us at a disadvantage.
I disagree because that area has been built up, and we can agree to disagree on that.
Oh, we all
Okay,
agree.
but I think that area has been built up and it's enticing. People are going to want to go there.
Respectfully, I disagree.
I'm gonna let Ms. Stubbs, and then after that, we're gonna wrap this up.
So are you saying that if Dave & Buster's when they arrive, you can tell them if you want to abate, you have to build heat. You must build heat if you want to abate.
Yes,
If you want to build what you want to build, you can't have it. Is that what you're saying?
You could do that as a council, yes.
At the same time, he said, we gotta do what we can do to get these radios.
we're a township of 65,000 people with Washington Township has 70.
My question, at the same time, when you say we gotta get some ratables out,
Mhm.
don't you think we're trying to shoot ourselves in the foot when we say, we don't want you here unless you're here?
No, because
Okay.
if David Butler,
So
if
they-
David
they can
Busters
say
wants to
they're gonna
come,
go to West Deptford. They
Da-
can say they're gonna go to West Deptford. No, let us-
David Busters, though, is gonna wanna come here because of the proximity to Washington Township, the proximity going to the beach. Because the people that come from Pennsylvania that take 42 that cut through, this is halfway down to the
So they can
beach.
make their money, but we're
Okay.
gonna tell them no, because we want you to build on an area that we designate. That's what you're saying.
You don't put it that way, you just say, there's our abatement in this area.
You're saying-
You make it so, because they're gonna be enticed by the fact that there's that many people because of the fact that there is a,
They're
outlet
enticed
store.
by that abatement. They're enticed by that abatement. That's what's competitive. This is, we're talking business now.
I understand that.
We're not doing business with politics.
Thank you, Mr. Stumpf. Thank you, Mr. Sweet, for your time.
thank you.
Is there anyone else? Mr. Krueger, our last speaker of the evening.
Things got a bit complex there in that back and forth. If we have half the ratables of Cherry Hill, then we can't spend like Cherry Hill. And I just want to bring things back to simplicity. The reason I asked for your opinion was to gauge whether or not this council has, I guess, the gumption to move forward with changing the trajectory of that red line. Because in a year or two, my wife and I are going to be deciding where to end up. And if I don't feel as though this council is going to try to at least level that line, but in all actuality, what I would like to see is lower that line, change the trajectory of that line, then we have a decision to make. Well, I have, on my side of the family, a family history here in Gloucester Township. I'd like to stay, but not knowing that line, when we go to buy our 20, 25-year home with our kids and family, that line is going to continue, in a parabolic motion, and, it's going to be another 3x in a decade and a half. The ROI there for us just doesn't make sense. So that's why it's so important to me, and I just want to bring it back to a simple point, and that's why I present the data. That's why I take time at home and here to voice what I find as a concern, and ultimately what is going to be a decision point for my family. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
I understand that point. I understand the point you're making. Thank you.
We close the second public portion. Polling of directors.
Mr. Barlow.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Curtis.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Lefferts.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Parkins.
Just to inform council that our police personnel began getting our first round of COVID-19 vaccines today. We've been working, making plans for the Camden County College vaccine site. They're waiting to find out when it's going to be open. We're hoping for Wednesday, but it's dependent on the vaccine supply. But they're ready to go. We have a good plan in place, and it's being run by Camden County. We're supplementing and assisting, and they're looking at doing 515 to 700 or so vaccines a day, depending on the supply. For those that haven't, I recommend that you register. Go to the state hub to register to get on that list. As they open the categories up, you'll be notified to make an appointment to get your vaccine if you so wish. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Barlow.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Hutchison.
I recently had to quarantine for, I guess, from the 27th to the 7th. And all that I could do pretty much was watch TV and read. And during that time, I spent a lot of time watching news. And I have to say that we need to do a better job getting along with one another. Now, I know I'm speaking just to Sam and Paul and a couple of police officers and us, and maybe somebody watching. I disagree tremendously with the Republicans in Washington, tremendously. But I have to find a common ground to coexist, and I really have to seek out that common ground, not to change people's minds, but we have to get along with one another. If we don't do that, we're headed in a real bad direction. So for the past year and a half, I've been trying my best. Paul, you and I broke the ice before any of this crazy stuff started happening. Ray and I talk. We don't agree on very many things, but we have an agreement to disagree. I think we have got to all start doing that. We have to. We got to change the dynamic. So that's all I can say.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
Just want to thank everyone for coming out. Good night.
Mr.
I just wanted to add that no matter where you go, there's always going to be taxes. Taxes stink. Me and my wife, we've been here for 21 years. We've raised 2 children here, a 19-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter. I just want to say there's been a tremendous amount of opportunity here at Gloucester Township. We love living here. We're glad to live here. Thank you all and have a great night.
Thank you everybody for coming. Again, I always feel discussion is important. Even having differences of opinions is important as long as we share these differences with respect. I think it's very important how we learn, how we get new ideas, how we have a different thought process. Other than that, we stay in between. So I appreciate everyone coming. I appreciate the special conversation. Thank you.
Mrs. Reynolds?
I do thank you guys for your comments. Chief, I'm thrilled to hear that officers have the opportunity to get the vaccine, and those who wish to do so can do so. I did get my second dose today, which I was happy about. I'm hoping I feel as good tomorrow as I do right now, because from what I'm hearing, the next 24 to 36 hours could be a little ugly for some people. I had no issues with the first dose, and I'll take the side effects for the dose for 24 to 46 hours, 38 hours to avoid getting the virus in the long run. I do hope everyone still is smart out there, wear your masks, small gatherings. The virus is still there, it is still spreading, and we're still seeing a ton of it in the hospital. Those of you know I work at Virtua. About a week and a half ago, they had the highest hospital census they have ever had in the history of Virtua. And it's not all COVID. A lot of it is just people who are sick because they're waiting to go to the hospital because of COVID. So take care of yourself, take care of your families, listen to your body, and go to the doctor if you need to go. Don't be afraid to do those things because it can backfire on you in the long run. So please be smart and take care of yourself.
Mrs. Trotter?
Thank you all, and have a good night.
Mr. McConnell?
Thank you for coming out this evening. I just want to piggyback on Mr. Hutchinson's comments. In my own office this past week, there were some interesting conversations about what transpired in Washington on Wednesday. Comparing marches and rallies in the summer compared to what happened on Wednesday, and just having very frank conversations. And I think that sometimes that's good. No, I think it's not sometimes. I think it's good to have those conversations and get people's perspectives and be respectful of each other. And I think there needs to be a lowering of the temperature, not only just for our nation, but even here. And that's why I tried to emphasize at our last meeting, to just lower the temperature and everybody would be respectful of each other. So when in that same vein, I talked about this in the past when Dan was on the opposite side, and we stood there in the corner one day and had a conversation. I learned about where Dan grew up and where he went to college, and some of the struggles that we had as kids. I understood where he was coming from, and even though he had an R after his name at the time, I liked him. But we had philosophical differences. When I played cornhole with Sam and Mike Mignot out in the parking lot in the Vets Park, and Andrea Stubbs was our cheerleader. Remember that, Andrea? Okay. But we had an opportunity to engage in game and just play and not talk about politics. But the thing I also learned from that time, that conversation, is that when Sam told me that his mother lives with him, and I brought that up during Hispanic Heritage Month, and how I appreciated it and like that he had his taking care of his mother and she resides with him. So, you know, if we take the time to understand each other, where we're coming from, and have a conversation, a dialogue, it's okay. We have philosophical differences. I disagree with, you know, your tax abatement approach, and Mr. Crute, when Mr. Heimball comes up in here and he talks about tax abatements, you know, I tend to go off on it. I do think it's an attractive tool for our township. But it's okay to lower the temperature and have a conversation with each other. MLK Day, as you saw on the feed on our platforms from the township, was canceled this year. But if you do have an opportunity to do something, whether it's in your own home as a family or with a different group, and contribute or volunteer or do something that helps out, the MLK program out of Philadelphia is running a virtual MLK Day of service. We're not doing that this year, but we'll be back next year. This was supposed to be our 10th year for MLK Day here in our township, but we will be back next year with that. And lastly, we had two residents in our township that had lost loved ones. Helen Albright Troxel, who was a former councilwoman and freeholder in our county, lost her husband, Joseph Troxel, I believe on Christmas Eve. Joe Troxel was a professor and served as a planning board member here. I had an opportunity to serve with him, the honor to serve with him on the planning board when I first got on council. And lastly, George Hill, who is the president of our Rotary, his mother passed away after a long illness earlier in December, and her going home service was this past Saturday. If you can keep those families in your prayer, I do appreciate it. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. For the second, all in favor? Have a great evening, everyone.
Carol.
Computer or the